So recently I upgraded from the Fujifilm XT-4 to the Panasonic S5 Mark II. I have been shooting with the Fujifilm for almost 3 years now, and I used it to shoot mainly weddings and event videos. So mostly run-and-gun shootings as a one-man show. As a photographer and filmmaker, you want your camera to become one with your arm. You don't want your camera to hold you back from shooting what you see. And especially on weddings, you have to react pretty fast to capture the moment that's just happening. And therefore, switching camera systems is a tough one, because you have to get used to the new system, how everything works, how to set exposure, and how to get everything in focus. So why do we change camera systems after all? On paper, there are many reasons to upgrade your camera. For example, more resolution, better image quality, more dynamic range, better autofocus, less overheating, more battery life, better color science, and the list goes on. The question is, do you really need all these features? As I said, I used my Fujifilm cameras for almost 3 years now. And every time I got a limitation from it, like I could not get the shot that I want or something that just bothered me, I took out my iPhone and I took notes about that. And every time a new camera was released, I took out my note and I asked myself, will this camera really help me to become a better filmmaker? And will this camera solve the problems and the issues I currently have? So this video is about my note and all the small reasons that made me change from Fujifilm to Panasonic. First point is autofocus. At the moment I'm shooting on a Fujifilm XT-4 on autofocus, and as you can see, it's doing a pretty decent job tracking the camera right here or tracking my hand in front of my face. Real world scenarios, the camera did let me down a couple of times. That was one reason I wanted to change. And the Lumix with the new face detection autofocus, I think it's named, and also in combination with the Sigma 24-70 that I have here, I just updated both the software of the lens and of the body itself. Pretty decent, and I can't wait to figure it out. And also the videos that I saw also for sports videography, that's also something that I want to get more into in the future. I really can't wait to use this autofocus. Triggering autofocus while being in manual focus mode during recording. That's quite an interesting topic, but it's about a workflow that I have developed for the Fujifilm system. These newer kind of lenses, for example the Fujifilm XF 16-55 2.8, they come with a new kind of focusing system, which is called focus by wire. And focus by wire, some love it, some hate it. It brings their own advantages and disadvantages. But it means that you don't have a fixed end on both ends, like a fixed stop. And for me personal, I developed a workflow. When I am out shooting, I like to shoot in manual mode, and I like to play with foreground and background. I can focus manually. When I want to make like a big focus shift, for example, if I am close to focus something and then something in the distance happens, I can switch the camera and I press the button, and the camera will toggle the autofocus during manual focusing mode. But this will only work as long as the camera is not recording. With the Panasonic Lumix S5 Mark II instead, you can autofocus in manual mode, and then you push the button and the camera will toggle the autofocus for you also during recording. Higher screen resolution to check whether your object is in focus. With the Fujifilm XT-4 you already have like a quite decent LCD on the back, but when it comes to manual focusing and you have focus peaking on and then you zoom in, I personally feel sometimes it's quite hard to check whether your object is in focus, especially when it's farther away from the camera. And with the Panasonic S5 Mark II, I feel when I'm in manual focus mode and I have focus peaking on and then I zoom in on the LCD, personally, I feel it's more easy to see whether the object is in focus, especially when the object is further away from the camera. This can easily be fixed if you just mount an external monitor onto your camera. But this will make your rig way more heavy, and especially on a wedding, I want to fit into the crowd and don't have such a big footprint to be as lightweight and as invisible as possible. No exposure changes when zooming in on a constant aperture lens. This right here is the Fujifilm 16-55 f2.8 constant aperture. The aperture won't change when you zoom in. However, when you're shooting video and you're zooming in, the exposure will change ever so slightly. I don't know why it's like that with Fujifilm cameras, but to me as a run-and-gun shooter, this is kind of annoying. For example, you see something happening, you hit the record button, you zoom in, and then your exposure is changing. And this is really annoying and makes your video look less professional. And this affects your footage even more when you're shooting higher frame rates, like 50 FPS, and you stretch down your footage in post to get that slow motion. With the Panasonic Lumix S5 II, I could not see any exposure changes when you're zooming in, even with a constant aperture. Overheating when shooting 4K in the summertime. When I shot weddings in the summertime over here in Germany, I really did face overheating issues from time to time. Especially since I used backup recording to record on 2 SD cards at the same time for backup reasons, I really did push my camera to its limits. It's winter over here in Germany, and therefore I could not test the Panasonic S5 Mark II in that matter very properly, but I did my research on this, and on top of that it has an inbuilt fan, which the Fujifilm doesn't, and therefore I'm pretty confident to not face any overheating issues in the future. Time between stop and start of recording. Yeah, that's a little minor issue I'm having with the Fujifilm camera. If I stop recording, the camera takes a second to stop the recording, save the file, process the file, and be ready to shoot again. This annoyed me from time to time, because when you are out shooting and you realize you have the wrong frame rate or the wrong white balance, the white balance changed, then you have to stop recording, make your changes, set your exposure again. When you then have 1 second of delay when you stop the recording, that's really annoying. And with the newer Panasonic S5 Mark II, you don't have that delay. For example, if I press the button and I press the button again, like there's almost no delay. It feels like the camera is faster when processing the file and saving the footage onto the SD card. I also tried the faster and way more expensive UHS-2 cards with the Fujifilm, but it did not speed up the processing time at all. A bigger camera body to not have to detach your camera from the tripod when changing batteries. Yeah, another one about the workflow, and this pretty much says it all. I always thought that I would have to buy like a bigger camera to not have to detach it from the tripod to exchange the batteries. The S5 Mark II, it is like a bigger and heavier body because of course it is full frame, and also there's an inbuilt fan which needs some space. But they designed the screw on the bottom of the camera a little bit different. So the distance between the screw and the battery door, it is like a bigger distance. And therefore I don't have to detach the camera from the tripod anymore when I want to do fast battery changes. So this was my list of the small things and the small problems that I'm having with the Fujifilm XT-4 system that Panasonic with the S5 Mark II is solving for me when I'm shooting video. If you found this video helpful, I would highly appreciate your support by giving it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. My name is Jonathan, and I will see you next time. Bye. So, Cut, Schluss, aus, vorbei.